Hello everyone, I'm Pierpaolo Tricomi from the University of Padua, Italy, and today I'll present a new privacy-friendly de-authentication system called BLUFADE, Blurred Face Detection. This work was done in collaboration with the University of California, Irvine. I'll start my presentation by showing the problem, followed by an overview of the system we developed to tackle it. To preserve the user privacy, we physically blurred a webcam. Thus, I'll show you the selection process to find the best blurring material. Next, I'll present our experiments and results and conclude the paper with discussion about future directions. Any secure system mandates an authentication process at the beginning of the user session and de-authentication at the end, usually by asking the user to explicitly log out. While authentication is necessary in most of the cases to use the system, the authentication is often underestimated. In fact, people are often lazy or careless, and they forget or simply don't want to de-authenticate. This may lead to the risk of the so-called lunchtime attack, in which an attacker gains access to the active session of a user who left the workstation unattended, for example, to go out for lunch, as the name suggests, or for a break. In the recent years, the research community developed several de-authentication methods. A naive way to de-authenticate a user is by using inactivity timeouts. After a period the user is inactive, the authentication automatically occurs. However, finding such timers is challenging, and the user might be working even without interacting with the system, for example during a phone call or while reading an email. More sophisticated algorithms have been deployed, such as profiling a user through keystroke dynamics, wearable devices, posture biometrics, gaze tracking, or similar. However, all methods present some drawbacks, ranging from low performances, high deployment costs, obtrusiveness, or the user must be always active. An intuitive approach to continuously authenticate users and de-authenticate them when they leave would be to recognize the user face through a webcam and keep the user logged in as long as the face is recognized. However, these methods show critical privacy concerns, since the images can be collected by manufacturers or even hackers. In fact, it's quite common to see people applying patches on their webcams to feel more secure. This gave us the idea to develop a system that physically blurs the webcam, making the user more confident in using such a system. Let's now see an overview of the proposed system. When designing BLUFADE, we want it to be privacy-friendly, secure, and usable without impacting the normal user behavior. In brief, at the beginning of the session, the user logs in through canonical methods, such as by providing a password or through fingerprint recognition. Then, BLUFADE keeps the user logged in by continuously detecting their face. The webcam, in this case, is physically blurred to preserve user privacy by applying a readily available and cheap tape. When the user leaves, BLUFADE automatically de-authenticates them in less than 3 seconds, protecting them from security threats. There are many aspects of BLUFADE to consider. First of all, this de-authentication system can be applied to any computer with a built-in webcam or by using an external one. Thus, the system is very easy to deploy and to distribute to users. Second, the choice of the blurring material is crucial. We need a material that obfuscates the personal trace of a person, but still allows the detection of a face. Thus, we need to evaluate very carefully the material to use. Third, the time BLUFADE needs to understand the user left and accordingly to log them out is very short, as I will better describe in our experiments. In less than 3 seconds, it is very difficult for an attacker to take the place of the user who left without being noticed. Thus, lunchtime attack is very difficult or even impossible to achieve in compared with other state-of-the-art techniques. Last, BLUFADE shows several benefits. For example, it does not require any burden for the user, like performing additional action or task or wearing any device. Besides a webcam, built in almost any portable device, no extra equipment is needed, and the only requirement is for the user to be in front of the webcam. So, any kind of activity or even inactivity is permitted without causing frogs logout. When designing and evaluating BLUFADE, we consider 4 application scenarios that can well represent most common work situations. We made a clear distinction between personal and shared computers and between fixed versus stationary ones, which determines the background behind the user recorded by the webcam. In the first scenario, the user uses a personal computer always in the same place, like in a common office. In this case, the background recorded by the webcam is always the same. In the second scenario, the computer is shared among several people, but seeing a fixed background, so always the same background, like in a hospital hall. The third scenario represents a common personal laptop, always used by the same users, but in many places, thus with different backgrounds, for example, a room, an office, or even a park. The last scenario has a shared computer seeing a variable background, like an ATM on the street. In this case, the background always varies depending on who is passing behind the user, like people or cars, or even different weather conditions. These backgrounds have an intrinsic level of difficulty for BLUFADE. In fact, being the background fixed, like in the first and second scenarios, the face detection algorithm can learn what the background is and focuses only in recognizing the shape of a face. When the background varies, for the algorithm it is much more difficult to correctly identify a face, especially if blurred. Moreover, when the computer is personal, an enrollment procedure can be used to teach the system who is the owner, helping a bit with the detection. This, obviously, is not possible if the computer is shared by many people. Let's now see how we collected and evaluated some blurry materials for BLUFADE. The choice of the blurry material for BLUFADE was critical. In fact, we needed a material that blurs enough to prevent face recognition, but not too much to allow face detection. Last, we wanted something cheap and readily available. This resulted in selecting 5 filters presented on the right: a common plastic material to put under chairs to prevent them scratching the floor, an anti-reflex material to put on windows, a single or double layer of RUV transferred paper, and scotch. As you can see from the figures, they offer different levels of blur. Some of them are maintaining a higher quality of the image, probably allowing face recognition. Others, like Scotch, are degrading the image a lot, probably making difficult not only face recognition, but also face detection. The doll that you see in the images is called Dolores, and she was used to further evaluate the blur level of our materials. We evaluated the selected materials through visual inspection and by analyzing the quality of the images, that is, by measuring their sharpness after the blur was applied. The quality of the image was evaluated using the unique value by analyzing a bidimensional Fourier transformate. In this experiment, we took several photos of Dolores in a light-controlled environment at several distances, from 30 to 19 centimeters, with a step on 10 centimeters. For each step, we used 3 samples of the blurry material, taking 5 pictures from each of them. Then, we averaged the results. On the right, you can see a graph showing the unique value, the lower the better the quality image, for the distance I mentioned. Through the graph and from visual inspection, we selected chair and anti-left as best candidates, since they did not ruin the image quality excessively, likely permitting face detection, and could potentially prevent face recognition. It was also interesting to note that the image quality was not much affected by the distance of Dolores from the webcam. After we selected the 2 candidates, we evaluated them on a privacy point of view to find the best one for BLUFADE. As we said, we want to find a material that can prevent face recognition, protecting the user privacy. To this aim, we created a blurry celebrities dataset. The dataset was formed by 5,000 celebrity images from Celeb-A dataset and 5,000 background images from the Sun dataset. To retrieve their physically blurred version, we applied the chair and anti-ref filters to a laptop webcam and recorded the slideshow of the images on a tablet. Then we cut the video to obtain the images. The dataset we collected is now available. The celebrity dataset was also useful to have thousands of blurry images of people to be used further in our experiments. After we created the blurry celebrity dataset, we conducted a user study to assess the privacy the 2 materials could offer. We asked participants to recognize 10 well-known celebrities and write down their names. Each celebrity was presented first with an anti-ref filter, which is the most blurry one, then with chair filter, and last with no filter, without the possibility to go back and change the provided name. Thus, if they wrote the correct name with no filter, but a wrong one with a filter, we could assess the filter was preserving the privacy, since the user failed to recognize a celebrity they knew. From a total of 70 participants, 391 images were correctly recognized when no filter was used. Almost 70% of them were also correctly labeled using the chair filter, while only 1% of them was classified correctly when anti-ref was used. Thus, we concluded that anti-ref could successfully protect user privacy. Now, as I'm recording myself through a webcam for this presentation, I can give you a live example of the anti-ref filter. This is me with no filters, and this is what happens if I use the anti-ref filter. Clearly, you can still tell there is a face behind the filter, especially if I move my head like this, which means that you are able to perform face detection. Probably, you can also guess that I'm not Angelina Jolie, but would you be able to recognize me behind this level of blur? I think you will have serious difficulties in doing so. I'll now present the experiments we did to build and test BLUFADE. First, we collected data of 30 real users in front of a blurred webcam using the anti-ref filter. To the participants, we asked to firstly perform unenrollment procedures, taking 9 snapshots in different positions, by varying the distance from the webcam, their position, or the direction they looked. In particular, we asked them to be in front of the webcam, like me right now, to be closer to the webcam, like this, to be far from the webcam, to translate to left and right, and to look up, down, left, or right. Then we asked them to perform common everyday actions, and we recorded them for 10 seconds during each action. In particular, we asked them to read an email, to write some sentences, to take a look at their phones, to talk with a colleague or their size, and finally to leave the workstation. The users repeated this action in 4 different backgrounds with increasing difficulties. First, we have a white wall, which is easy since there is only one color involved. Second, we had a white wall with a closet, which is considered medium easy. In this case, there are many colors, but they result to be blended because of the blur. Then we have a white wall with a blue door, which is considered medium hard, since we have a clear multicolor background. Last, we have a background with a wall, a window, and a blackboard. This is considered to be hard, because there are many colors, many objects, and also a source of light behind the user. This people dataset is also available for researchers. After we created the dataset, we needed to test state-of-the-art algorithms to see whether they could correctly perform face detection on our highly blurred data. To this aim, we tested both commercial and academic products on a subset of celebrities and people datasets. From the table, we can see that Google and Azure version 1 performed poorly, before 5% of accuracy. Tina Face, which is one of the best face detection models developed in academia, performed below 20% of accuracy. Amazon didn't pass the 50% threshold either. The best overall was Azure version 3, which was specifically designed for blurry images. However, 70% of accuracy was too low to develop a reliable and secure system. In fact, even in this best case, the user would experience many undesirable logouts. Thus, since state-of-the-art algorithms were not good enough for BLUFADE, we created our personal model. First of all, given the high level of blur, we shaped the problem as an object detection task, rather than face detection task. We also decided to not implement just a binary classifier to predict face-no face, to possibly track the person or detect 2 or more people. As the implementation, we fine-tuned RetinaNet, a state-of-the-art neural network made of ResNet and feature pyramid network. As a backbone, we used the COCO pre-trained version. We replayed the classification app to be able to identify a single class, that is, a face, and fine-tune it using 150 batches of 32 samples each, using the SGD optimizer. As seen in the figure on the right, the network should be able to detect the position of a face, or nothing if the face was missing. As presented at the beginning, we modeled 4 application scenarios to cover the most common everyday situations. In general, we used the enrollment snapshot in training and the activity frames in test. Then, we tested person by person and background by background, changing the training set every time according to application scenarios. In the first scenario, we have the same person and a fixed background. This means that the user can do an enrollment on his workplace to increase the performance of the system. As a test set, in every scenario, we take every time the frames of the actions of a person P on a background B that are fixed, for all possible people and backgrounds. In these and the next examples, we test the man with mustache on a blue background. As a training set, we use the enrollment snapshot of the man with mustache on the blue background, plus all the snapshots of the other people on the remaining three backgrounds. This will clearly reflect that the user can enroll in the system, which was pre-trained with completely different people on different backgrounds than the one tested. In the second scenario, we have different people and a fixed background. Thus, this time, the training set was composed by all the snapshots of the people different from the person with mustache in all the four backgrounds. By using different people from the man with mustache on a blue background in training, we are excluding the possibility of performing an enrollment, since the workstation is shared. However, since the background is fixed, the face detection model could be trained on many people in many backgrounds, and fine-tuned using the particular background in which the workstation will be installed, the blue in our case, for example by using pictures of the technicians. The third scenario is probably the most difficult to be represented in our system. Here we have the same person on variable backgrounds. Since the person is the same, we can add the enrollment snapshot in the training set, but on a different background, and use the snapshot of all the other people on the two remaining backgrounds. The use of the yellow background for the enrollment ensures the variability of the background from the same person, while the snapshot of people in the remaining two backgrounds are necessary to represent that the face detection model will be trained on completely different people and backgrounds. Last, with different people and variable backgrounds, we use as a training set all the enrollment snapshot of people different from the man with mustache in background different from the blue one. This scenario is the most simple to understand and represent. In fact, since the user would use the system ideally a single time, the face detection model must be trained on many different people and backgrounds. As a last experiment, we tried to augment the variance in our training set, using only people, people and celebrities, and only celebrities dataset. The only celebrities case was possible just in the four scenarios, since we couldn't have them on multiple backgrounds. Augmenting the variance of the dataset could increase the robustness of the system and the ability to generalize better. In fact, using the dataset celebrities, we could be able to have thousands of people over thousands of backgrounds with very low effort. So, BLUFADE could benefit a lot when tested on new people and new scenarios. Let's now see the results of BLUFADE. As we said, face detection algorithm is the core of BLUFADE. We reached the best performance on the easiest background with 98% of accuracy when using people only, and slightly losing some performances when adding celebrities. From the results, we saw that talk with colleague action showed the lower accuracy, most likely because people were showing their profiles. Also, the leave workstation showed some errors in the transition period, that is when the person is standing up. In this case, in fact, it was difficult to label when the people's faces were still visible. However, this transition period lasts very few frames for each participant. Surprisingly, the enrollment of the person in the training set did not help much in the task, probably because it reduced the variance of the training set. Overall, we reached the best performance when using in training only people and not celebrities. This is understandable since the training and test sets were more similar. So, to recap, the blur face detection reached 90% of accuracy or even more in all the scenarios. If this is generally considered very good in computer vision tasks, this was not enough for our system. In fact, 90% of accuracy means that BLUFADE will de-authenticate the user every 10 frames, or every 1/3 of a second, which is clearly not unspeakable. Thus, we took in account two crucial aspects when analyzing face detection performances. First, the face detection algorithm committed sparse mistakes and not sequential ones. Second, the authentication do not need to be instantaneous. In fact, there is a grace period in which the person is leaving the workstation, in which they can clearly see if someone is taking over their session. In literature, a good grace period is below 6 seconds. Thus, our idea was to use a sliding window of aggregated frames to de-authenticate users. In other words, the de-authentication occurs after a phase is not detected for n consecutive frames. We test n from 1 to 90, which correspond to 3 seconds, since our webcam recorded at 30 frames per second. On the left, you can see BLUFADE performances on the first scenario. The bars represented different backgrounds and the logout accuracy. The dots show the respective grace period. It is easy to see that using only one aggregated frame, which means no aggregation at all, the logout accuracy is very low and thus BLUFADE is unreliable. Instead, by increasing the aggregation to 30, we reach almost 100% on the first 3 backgrounds in less than 3 seconds. The fourth background, which was the most difficult, reached more than 90% of accuracy without aggregation frames. On the right, it is possible to see the average of the results with different training sets. It is people only, celebrities only, and people plus celebrities. Clearly, with people only, we have the better performance, and on average, we reach almost 100% of accuracy in less than 4 seconds. Adding celebrities into the training set slightly lowers the performances, but on a large scale, it could help the model to generalize better. As we said before, this is reasonable because the training and the dataset were more similar. After having presented the best material selection, the experiment to develop and test BLUFADE, and the results we obtained on the application scenarios, it's now time to conclude the presentation with a brief recap and a discussion on future directions. In this work, we presented BLUFADE, a new de-authentication system based on blurred face detection. We conducted extensive experiments to select a good physical blurry material, cheap and readily available, to protect user privacy. From 5 best candidates, we selected the 2 materials that yield a good image quality but potentially preserve user privacy. The privacy aspect was evaluated through an online survey on well-known celebrities, which determined anti-real filter as the best material. The performances of BLUFADE are very good. It is based on a face detection algorithm that works with 90% of accuracy in most difficult backgrounds and up to 98% in simplest one. By analyzing the error committed by the face detection algorithm, we built BLUFADE accordingly, obtaining very good results. We reach up to 100% of accuracy in under 3 seconds on simplest background and 96% of accuracy in difficult ones. The application scenario we consider cover most of real-world systems. Last, the 2 datasets we use are already available for research inside in the topics. In the future, we plan to conduct more security evaluation. For example, we want to test whether we can reverse the physical blur or trying to detect more people. If the blur can be reversed, this will threaten again the user privacy. Instead, being able to detect more people, we could alert the user if someone is behind them, trying to take over their active sessions. Last, we would implement a tracking system rather than just detecting the user so that we can increase the overall reliability of the mechanism. Thank you for your attention and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.